Hey, the class this morning, the breakfast this morning, is sponsored by the Sidlos in memory of Victor's father, Shlomo Zalman ben Yoel. Now, that's not the reason I chose the topic, but I think I remember Victor telling me many times that he has a tremendous appreciation for the bracha of Asher Yatzar after seeing his father many years go through dialysis. Correct? The truth was that Actually, I mentioned on Shabbos that I got a few new books recently, and one of the books I bought, I told you I buy a lot of books. I can't read all the books that I buy, but I think it's worth it. If you're going to spend your money on something, Jewish books is a good idea. I just saw recently that we were talking on Shabbos about ethical wills. So one rabbi wrote in his ethical will, the Nachlas Yaakov, he wrote that on his kever, on his grave, on his monument, he doesn't want anything to write any titles, that he was a rabbi, that he was this, he was a tzaddik, he was a gon. He said, who knows, what's a tzaddik, even though I was a rabbi here, a rabbi there, who knows if I did it for the right reasons, and why do I need 7 stone? I'm the cop upstairs, that 7 stone has to be this, this might be an embarrassment for me. But he permitted them to write the names of the books, the names of the svarim that he wrote, because he said, listen, B'stamah, there's at least one thing in some sefer that inspired someone, so that will be a merit for me. So I said, listen, I buy all these books, I don't know, maybe if I find one thing in one book for myself or to share with other people or someone else is going to read, so the thing was, so what is it? Whatever that money is, it's worth it to be inspired to find something in one Jewish book. So one of the books I just bought was Rabbi Badner, a long time ago, put out a book, Feldon put it out, called Halachos of Brachos, and he came out now with the second volume, Halachos of Brachos for all different seasons, all the brachos that we make on all the different Yom Tovim, and he has a section in there on the bracha of Asher Yatzar, the bracha that we make it in the morning, as we'll discuss, we'll make it after we use the facilities, after we relieve ourselves, and I was looking at it, so it sparked my interest, and therefore decided, and then I was looking a little more, it's a very large topic, so I said, we'll do this in 3 parts, but you could come to each one separately. There's the laws of the brachos of Asher Yatzar, inspiration, and the explanation, understanding what the bracha means. So originally I was actually going to, I didn't have so much time since I decided to give it, so originally I thought, okay, I'll just do the laws first, but then as I started looking at the laws, that I found this sefer I don't have, but I have my parents bought me a number of years ago, something called Yatzar HaChochma, which is a treasure chest of wisdom, which is a hard drive that has about 70,000 svarim on there. It cost a decent amount of money, but again, I got it as a gift, but it's worth it. You find a few things on there. I found a sefer about the bracha of Asher Yatzar that's 600 pages, just about the bracha of Asher Yatzar. And most of it is halachos. So then I said, okay, last night I decided we'll do the inspiration first. It probably makes sense anyway to be inspired a little bit first. If we're inspired, then maybe we'll want to learn more about the halachos. So I'm really not saying anything on my own here. I'm just going to quote and share with you a few things. Most of it is from this sefer, which is called Birchas Eson, written by Eitan Shoshan in Eretz Yisrael. And again, most of the sefer deals with different halachos relevant to the bracha of Asher Yatzar. But he has at the beginning a couple of pieces from other people, in inspirational words, and some things at the end. So I'm going to share some of that with you this morning. I'll just start off. There's obviously the bracha of Asher Yatzar, and as we said, it's something that I just heard someone, I think here, talking overheard a second ago, someone saying when he was young, it's a funny bracha, you make this bracha when you use the bathroom, kids joke around about it. When you start to get a little older and you're so thankful that things are working, you appreciate it a little bit more. There's a poster hanging. There's someone that made posters. I have cards that people take at the end. Whoever made up these cards has a tremendous schus. Thousands and thousands have been given out just to have people appreciate a little more the bracha of Asher Yatzar. And there's many aspects to it. I saw quoted over here from Rabbi Elia Roth. He was a gabbai of some of the Zvila rabbis in Yerushalayim. So he said, we should be thanking Hashem so profusely after we used the bathroom. He said, if you think about it, imagine if your body wasn't working and you had to go empty in your body, you had to go to check into the hospital to get, an operation, a surgery, some type of procedure, right? It will be a complex medical procedure. When a person uses the bathroom, he really just went through a complex medical procedure. Now, it's not, who did you go to, which doctor performed it, the top specialist. You went to the top specialist in the world. No anesthesia, and best of all, no charge, free of charge, no hospital bill, So you think about everything that's involved in just being able to use the bathroom. There's much to be thankful for. This might be a famous story. It's been around the internet. I've heard it before. This article is written by Kenneth M. Prager, an MD in Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center in New York. And he writes, as we said before, he was in elementary school. I think he went to yeshiva day school. Jewish parochial school, where they had religious and secular studies. And he said the classmates used to find it amusing. There was a sign outside the bathroom, make a blessing after you went to the bathroom. An ancient Jewish blessing, the blessing we're discussing this morning of Yatzar, and it was supposed to be recited after one relieved oneself. So he said for grade school children, there could be nothing more strange or ridiculous than to link acts of, defecation. You go into the bathroom and you link that with holy words. You're making a blessing. It seems very strange to a young child. Blessings are for, in the synagogue, the holy days. That's when what is this? So he said it took him several decades to realize the wisdom that lay behind this blessing that was composed by Abaye. There's a 4th century Babylonian rabbi. We find this bracha is brought in the Gemara and Brachos and Tav Samach. Abaye's blessing is contained in the Talmud, as he says. So, without the exact words, we'll discuss them further when we talk about the explanation, and maybe a little bit today. But he says, an observant Jew is supposed to recite this blessing in Hebrew after each visit to the bathroom. We young yeshiva students were reminded of our obligation to recite this prayer by the signs that contained its text that were posted just outside the restroom doors. It is one thing, however, to post these signs, and it's quite another to realistically expect young children who haven't reached such an age of maturity to realize the wisdom and the need for reciting this 1600-year-old blessing related to bodily functions. He writes, it was not until my second year of medical school that I first began to understand the appropriateness of this short prayer. And it brought home to him the terrible consequences of even minor aberrations in the structure and function of the human body. At the very least, I began to no longer take for granted the normalcy of my trips to the bathroom. Instead, I started to realize how many things had to operate just right for these minor interruptions of my daily routine to run smoothly. And he thought of Abaye and his blessing. He recalled, I believe he was not observant. He attended a yeshiva day school, and he recalled his days at yeshiva, remembered how silly that sign outside the bathroom had seemed. After seeing patients whose lives revolved around their dialysis machines, others with all other different problems, urinary catheters, I realized how wise the rabbi had been. And then it happened. He began to recite Abaye's bracha, the bracha of Yatzar. First he had to go back to his siddur, his prayer book, to get the text right. And with repetition, there were many opportunities for a novice to get to know this blessing well. And finally, he was able to recite it fluently with sincerity and understanding. He writes, over the years, the Yatzar became for him an opportunity to offer thanks not just for the proper functioning of his organs, but for all his overall good health. The text therefore refers to catastrophic consequences of the rupture or obstruction of any bodily structure. We say in the prayer, if one thing would be open that's supposed to be closed, or one thing would be closed that's supposed to be open, we wouldn't be able to exist. So he says he often wondered if other people also yearn for some way to express gratitude for their good health. Physicians especially, who are exposed daily to the ravages that illness can wreak, must sometimes feel the need to express thanks for being well and thus well-being. Perhaps a generic, non-denominational Yatzar can be composed for those who want to verbalize their gratitude for being blessed with good health. Then he says, there was one unforgettable patient whose story reinforced the truth and beauty of the Yatzar for me forever. Josh was a 20-year-old student who sustained an unstable fracture of his 3rd and 4th cervical vertebrae in a motor vehicle crash. He nearly died from his injury and required emergency intubation and ventilator. How do you pronounce it? He had to go into the ventilator, ventilatory support. He was initially totally a quadriplegic, but for weak flex, he was able to flex only his right bicep. After a long period of rehabilitation, finally there were some promising signs of neurological recovery, and a few months later, suddenly, unexpectedly, movement of a finger, a flexing of the toe, a return of a sensation. Slowly he started to recover. With incredible courage and hard work and an excellent physical therapist, Josh improved day by day. In time, and after what seemed like a miracle, he was able to walk slowly with a leg brace and a cane. But Josh continued to require intermittent catheterization. I knew only too well the problems and perils this young man would face for the rest of his life because of his bladder that did not work properly. The urologists were very pessimistic about his chances for not requiring catheterization. They had not seen this occur after a spinal cord injury of this severity. Then the impossible happened. I was there the day Josh no longer required a urinary catheter. I thought of a bias Asher Yatzar prayer. Pointing out that I cannot imagine a more meaningful scenario for its recitation, I suggested to Josh, who was also graduated from a day school, to say the prayer. He agreed. As he recited the ancient bracha, tears welled in my eyes. Josh is my son. This is a famous story, maybe you heard it before, but sometimes, we say this day in and day out, and we use the facilities day in and day out, and we take it for granted that our bodies function properly. And God forbid it should be in situations where it doesn't function so properly that we finally realize how important it is and how important this blessing is to thank Hashem for our body functioning properly. If you actually look, he went on, I looked online, Josh, his son, he was actually hit by a car by an Arab in Israel, and he actually went to search, after many years, he went to find him. And he has a couple of TED Talks if you look him up. It's interesting. But again, as we said, this is a bracha. We actually make this bracha. We'll talk more about it when we talk about the laws of Asher Yatzar. We make the bracha Asher Yatzar in the morning as part of the Birchos HaShachar, part of the morning blessings. We make a blessing, Elokai Neshama. We thank Hashem for our soul, and we thank Hashem for our physical body. But besides that, then, the halacha brings down that we make this bracha each time we relieve ourselves during the day. So, when you reach my age, you have numerous opportunities to make this bracha. But it's something that we have many opportunities to make, and therefore it's definitely something that we need to focus on what it's all about. In the Sefer, he brings from, I believe this is from Rabbi Shimshon Pincus. In general, he talks about that, we don't David HaMelech was masakin to make mea brachos, 100 blessings a day. And there was a plague going on, 100 people were dying, and David HaMelech decided he had to do something to stop this plague. And he talks about the idea, listen, sometimes you do tshuva, you work through the regular, normal, pattern that things go. You got to rectify everything and do tshuva, but sometimes you got to do something and cut to the chase. There's a plague going on. You can't just tell everyone, okay, improve and do tshuva. It's going to take a while. So he said, though, he was masaking 100 brachos to make 100 blessings a day. We make blessings, and that opens up the blessings of Hashem to bestow upon us. But he says this idea that the blessings, as we know, we daven every day, 3 times a day we say prayers. But all these different blessings that we can make throughout the day, he says when Hashem's past, when Hashem's anger was so strong, and he says the more, when you're angry at someone, the closer you are to the situation, a little bit of anger causes a lot more problems. You're angry with your friend, okay, there's anger in the family, in the home. That little bit of strife could cause much more terrible repercussions. When Hashem, who's so close to us, Hashem is angry, there's this terrible plague going on. But the closer one is, he views it as we're a family, and Hashem is our father, and we're tremendously close to him. If Hashem is angry, that means there's something broken in the relationship. There's something broken in the relationship. And the shalom bayis, peace has to be reconciled. There has to be peace in the home. The relationship has to be repaired between us and God. And the first step in any relationship is communication. There has to be an ongoing dialogue, ongoing communication. If you just pray to Hashem 3 times a day, Okay, that's, you have to at least, say, please take out the garbage. There has to be some, but ongoing communication makes that relationship happen. And therefore he's misakin brachos, ongoing brachos, all different types of brachos that we say during the day, so we constantly have this relationship with Hashem. And the bracha of Asher Yatzar, obviously, we can make many times a day, but as he says, as we'll see in a second, the bracha of Asher Yatzar, which is a focus on the fact that Hashem is in control of our bodies and our health and all of our bodily functions, we make it in the morning really as a much broader bracha to thanking Hashem for all of our bodily functions working. The bracha doesn't even directly discuss, as the Aruch HaShulchan points out, maybe it's not so appropriate, so nice, it doesn't discuss directly the fact that we're relieving ourselves, but that's when the rest of the day that bracha was masakin. We can't make a bracha every time, maybe we take a breath of air, but something like that, and we realize that this is keeping us alive, and we're masakin the bracha to make it each time. And when one focuses on the bracha, as we'll see in a second, the Seder Yom says that this is a tremendous segula, this has tremendous power for healing, for to have a refuah shalema, to have when a person is ill, that Hashem should heal us. And as he says, here if we go, we make it many times a day. It's a little bit more of a lengthy bracha than just the bracha that you make on food. But how can we just go and, if we miss the bracha altogether, but even if we do make the bracha, are we saying it with concentration? Are we just swallowing the words? Are we doing something as we're heading out of the bathroom and we're just mumbling it? Do we get involved in something else and then we forget all about it? But we have to focus on it and realize that it has tremendous power and what a merit we had to be able to use the facilities. As he says, a person's able to go to the bathroom, he's able to urinate properly. He's like, imagine a person who's sitting in bed, he can't use the bathroom, he has a catheter, he's has to go to dialysis. A person who could go to the bathroom, he says, you're a king. It's like a king's going to the bathroom, I don't know if that's, sitting on the throne, it's not so far off that line. But we actually talk about it. We say in the bracha, it's known before you Hashem, it's called the Beis HaKisei. But it's I think I saw someone discuss this, that we get such an idea, it's a little ironic. But where can we sort of get the closest to Hashem and attach ourselves to Him in a place that's sort of a place that we don't view as such a holy place, but there we're able to use our bodily animalistic functions properly, we can get tremendously close to Hashem. We have to realize the great chesed that Hashem does for us, that our bodies are working properly. And what he actually mentions that the bracha itself, most other blessings, we sort of ask Hashem. Usually we praise Hashem, we ask Hashem for something. You make a bracha, and you ask Hashem that it should continue to work well. The brachas in Shemona Esrei, the bakashas, we request Hashem. Here, it's so obvious. We don't have to say Hashem, please continue to work well. We say in the bracha, if this wouldn't work, we wouldn't be able to exist. We would be dead. That's it. And he says the bracha is so powerful for us. It's an interesting thing. Hashem made it. You could have a person. He could be learning. You talk about the Chazon Ish, the great Gedolim. They're learning for hours straight. But they also have to use the facilities. They have to take a break from their Torah, and Hashem makes it, every couple of hours you got to go to the bathroom. That's it. So here, why does this great Talmid Chacham, he has to be mevatel, he has to stop his learning, which is so powerful, to go use the bathroom? But he says that it's this bracha itself, the power that it has to help a person realize. Yeah, Torah is obviously a great thing, but this bracha itself also has tremendous power, and has such influence when we say it. The person is learning, yes, but it recharges his batteries, focusing on this bracha, that his learning is going to be even more meaningful after that. What the Seder Hayom brings down, just find it. He says that the bracha of Asher Yatzar is a segula l'nefla l'brius. It's has tremendous power to help the health of a person, for a person to be healed and to be healthy. He says his words are, Hashem levarech bracha Asher Yatzar b'kavana. A person makes the bracha of Asher Yatzar with concentration, mila b'mila, word for word. Lo yachla kol yamav lo yitztarech l'rof l'rofoso. Again, this means, I don't know what level you're saying the bracha on, but he says you wouldn't need, if a person would really concentrate on this bracha and be saying it appropriately, a person wouldn't get sick, a person wouldn't have to go to the doctor. Now, like he says somewhere else, that's, on condition you don't do everything else wrong. Just because you make this bracha and then you go do all the averos, it's not going to work. But this bracha has tremendous, tremendous power. If a person realizes through this blessing that everything he has, the kindness, the goodness that Hashem is giving him, his health, then he's opening up a wealth of Hashem's bracha, the shefa of Hashem's bracha, to be able to be bestowed upon him directly in terms of his health. And as we'll quote a few stories when we get at the end, we'll see how powerful this bracha is, and it's not a joke, but it works. He writes at the end of the Sefer, after writing the whole Sefer, he has a few words of inspiration. He says, how many people, we do many things for our health, and we're supposed to, right? We're supposed to, Hashem says you have to go to the doctor. It's interesting, I think we quoted this before, the Rabbeinu Bechaya says that when the Pasuk talks about going to a doctor, it talks about a messenger helping you get healed, it says, V'rapo yirape. It says the rapo yirape, the shorish reish pei aleph means to heal. So it uses a pei, the lashon pei. It's the pei with a dagish, with a dot in it, a pei. When we talk in the psukim, they talk about Hashem healing directly. It's refuah with a pei, not a pei, right? Pei is a harder. Whenever you have a dagish, whenever you have a dot in a certain letter, it's a stronger, harder letter. When you have to go to the doctor and you need to go through the means of the doctor, it's much more difficult. You have to go through much more pain, right? Besides that, you got to pay it out of your pocket, but then you got to go through the physical, you got to get that shot, you got to get that needle, you got to get the anesthesia, you got to go through the operation. It's painful. It's much more harsh. When a person is able to have a refuah, Baruch Hashem, rofei chol basar ma'afil lasos, as we say at the end of the bracha Yatzar, when Hashem just makes everything work properly, which we see is also called refuah. Hashem prevents any problems from happening. That's refuah. That's Hashem healing us in a much more pleasant manner. But we do many things to take care of our health, right? We take vitamins and we eat healthy and we go to the doctor and we do all these things. And we have to do them. We have to put in that effort, as we said. But what we really have to do is realize that Hashem is the one who heals us. And we have to take our spiritual vitamins, as he says, right? And those spiritual vitamins is focusing on the brachos that we make, Refueinu and Shmon Esrei, focusing on the bracha of Asher Yatzar, Baruch Atah Hashem Rofei Chol Basar Ma'afil Lasos. This is just as important, if not more important, because it's all in the hands of Hashem. Hashem wants us to put in the physical effort and take our medications and take our vitamins and go to the doctor. But at the end of the day, it's Hashem who heals us, and the most powerful component of our health and being healed and preventing illness in the first place is a focus on these brachas, and especially the bracha of Asher Yatzar, which we make numerous times a day, realizing that Hashem is in control of our health. And as the Seder Yom says, if we would focus on that bracha properly, then, and we have that spiritual effort that we put in, then Hashem will protect us from these illnesses. And he says, what does it take? He's not talking, and we're not talking about that we have to, let's just get to the step where we're able to say the bracha properly, word for word, have a basic understanding without, maybe we'll talk in the third part more about the explanations and what's behind the words, but just a basic understanding of the words and saying them properly. How long does it take? So he says, a person could go to the bathroom, let's say you go 5 times, 6 times a day. You reach my age, you go 10, 20 times a day. But a person goes a few times a day. So make a cheshbon, he says. How long does it take to say Asher Yatzar? Even just to say the words without any, major kavanos. Takes 20 seconds, 30 seconds. If you really want to, so you'll take longer. But he says 20 seconds. You could say it decently. You could say the bracha in 20 seconds, right? So 20 seconds. You go 6 times a day. What is that? How many minutes? 2 minutes. 2 minutes. So in a week, you're spending 14, 15 minutes. In a month, in a whole year, you're spending 12 hours on the bracha, And if you say it with real kavanah, so you'll spend 24 hours. So how much time is that already? A person goes to the doctor, and you could be waiting at the doctor for 12 hours almost sometimes. There was a doctor in the Queens. People used to go to them. They used to sit there for 5, 6 hours till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And then sometimes you get there, the doctor's not even, we have to cancel your appointment. Sorry, he's not there. He had an emergency. He can't help you now. So you could be waiting by a doctor for many, many more hours. Yeah, we have to go to the doctor. But we have to do our spiritual effort of focusing and making the bracha of Yatzar properly. That doesn't take too much time over a whole year. And what is the great benefit and the power that could help us in being healthy? The Chavetz Chaim says that there's a pasuk in Yecheskel talking about Hiram Melech Tzur, that he became very haughty and he made himself into a god. So the pasuk says, "Meleches tupecha unikavecha b'cha bayom yibarcha konenu." He says, Hashem says, your drums and your wind instruments, it's I guess a little bit poetic, were in you from the day that you created. Rashi says that it's saying you shouldn't be a Baal Gaiva. Look at your body, as we say in the bracha, the kavim, we have all these hollow, different organs that we have in our body, and, a person has to go, you have to go use the bathroom, the same as an animal uses the bathroom. You have to urinate, you have to defecate, you have to go to the bathroom the same as an animal. It puts us into our place a little bit. Don't be haughty, Look at what you have to do to survive. And it's not in your control. It's totally in God's control. And therefore he says that, again, it's a humbling experience. You're going to relieving yourself. If you realize it's what's going on, and that one little thing that could go wrong, and you're able to relieve yourself, and you're just the same as an animal, it is a humbling experience. And a person, he says, the Chavetz Chaim writes, he said, listen, so wouldn't it be enough, So go to the bathroom. Hashem could make you go to the bathroom once a week. You go. Paro, who was the Baal Gaiva, he went to the bathroom in the Nile in the morning, so Moshe had to go see him. Nobody should think he went to the bathroom, right? So Hashem could make it go to the bathroom, once a month, once a week, how many times? But no, we have to go numerous times. Hashem says, yeah, you're going to go many times a day. We have to, realize how it is all totally in the hands of Hashem, and we have nothing to be haughty about. He quotes from the Damascus Eliezer. He says, if by all blessings we have an obligation to bless Hashem with Yira and Ava, he says, surely by this bracha that we see, unfortunately we see how many people have different problems. How many people have all different types of urinary infections, urinary problems, other problems, and they can't live properly. Their life is not a life. Sometimes a person has to go relieve themselves. It's painful, it's hurtful. They don't want to go to the bathroom. To get out one drop could be tremendous, tremendous pain. And here we go, and it just comes out easily. No problems, no pain. It's working, right? And then a person, after we have a bracha to make. So do we make that bracha as we're doing something else? Do we right when we come out of the bathroom, we get involved in something else and forget about that bracha? Or we make it mumbling the words, we start talking to someone else? He says, is this gratitude to Hashem? Is this the gratitude that we have to Hashem when He makes everything work? Look at all the people that it doesn't look. Look how difficult it is. Look how painful it is. If Baruch Hashem things are working properly, or at least almost properly, whatever it is, how thankful we have to be. What a lack of gratitude it is if we don't come out of the bathroom and make the bracha with a little bit of concentration. Shimshon Pincus writes, he says, everything out there, every machine, you go to any any factory, anything, there's a machine. Someone has to be in charge of the machine. Someone has to make sure the machine works properly. Something breaks, the repairman has to come. My oven just, broke. You have to wait for the repairman to come. He has to repair it. He has to diagnose it. He sends you the bill, right? Every machine takes someone watching over it to make sure it doesn't break, make sure it's working properly. And here again, we're making the bracha of Yatzar. We're focusing on the fact that the human body is the most complex machine ever created. And here, this machine, if it doesn't, usually everything's just working perfectly. The fact that everything works in sync, that everything is working correctly, is just a mind-boggling thing that we have to take time to focus on. I'm not going to share everything with you. We'll be here all morning. But a few more things. He says, again, naturally, as we say, we take it for granted. A person is healthy, a person is making a decent livelihood, and we don't realize that everything is dependent upon Hashem. We don't realize the constant chesed that Hashem does. We don't want to wait for it to not work. We don't want to wait for the problems when we finally realize that it's all in the hands of Hashem. But we have to, we could just look around, unfortunately, at others and see how lucky we are. And really, as we say Rofei Chol Basar. The end of the bracha, we'll talk more about it when we talk about the explanation. But Rofei Chol Basar Mafilas, Hashem is the healer of all basar. So sometimes we take that to mean as obviously He heals everyone, which is true. But He says that's simple. He says the Rofei Chol Basar Mafilas is like the bracha says. When Hashem lets us be able to use the facilities, lets us be able to relieve ourselves, that's Rofei Chol Basar. That's the refuah for all of our basar. Without this, we wouldn't be able to exist. It's the Rofei Chol Basar. It's the refuah. It's Hashem letting us live properly. But that's a refuah that Hashem is Rofei Chol Basar. Our whole body is only able to exist because we're able to relieve ourselves. And he says a person has to recognize all of his life. He has to recognize that his health, everything is dependent upon Hashem. And we don't want to, just daven when things are bad, when the person is sick. When the person's sick, all of a sudden then we're putting the names on the cholim list. But it's before a person is sick. We have to realize this, when we're healthy, how thankful we need to be. And the body, as we said, it's an amazing thing. You probably know a lot better than me. You can read up on, it's good to probably read up on how the body works, just so we get a better appreciation. But when we're making the bracha of Yatzar, this is what we're focused on. Rofei Chol Basar, that the kavim, the holes work, the things that are closed work, and as it says, we have these holes. We can only the air within us. That's why we're alive. Really, it should just go out of all the holes, and we should deflate like a balloon. But Hashem makes it work. More than that, He says the hole itself. We relieve ourselves through a hole. Everything should just really go out of the hole. But that's how everything works. And the fact that the whole digestive system, how that all works perfectly, and the person's able to, even if when we're able to use the bathroom, we have different problems, right? It's not always working perfectly. The digestive system, if it doesn't work perfectly, there could be diarrhea on one side, there could be constipation. When it's working properly, we have to be even more thankful. Thank God it works even in those other things, and it's not worse than that. But when it's really working properly, how thankful do we have to be? And the whole digestive system, and how the body takes through the blood, and it takes everything to the proper, each nutrient to the part of the body that needs it. Again, just to focus on all these things, and if we would read up on it and think about it, we get a much greater appreciation. And the bracha that we make numerous times a day will be so much more meaningful. Show you a couple of stories. a couple of stories how powerful the bracha of Asher Yatzar is. He says there was a young boy, 18 years old. He came to a Dr. Brooks in the Tel HaShomer Hospital in Israel, and he was an older boy already, and he had a problem, seems, with wetting his bed at night. Terrible problem to have when you're 18 years old. And this Dr. Brooks, who was also a Talmud Chacham, a great Torah scholar, he gave him different advice in terms of the medical field. But after he gave him all his medical advice, he said to him, "You know what? I have another piece of advice for you. The bracha of Asher Yatzar. May start trying to concentrate on the bracha of Asher Yatzar to say it more b'kavana." And the boy came back to him after a few weeks, and he said his problem was solved. He took the medications as well, but whatever the medical advice was, but he started to put an effort into saying the bracha of Asher Yatzar. Another story he brings. There was a story in one of the Kololim in Bnei Brak. There was a son of a young, one of the Kolol members that attracted some illness also in this area. And again, what did they do as a schus? The Avrechim got together. They decided they're going to strengthen themselves in the area of saying the bracha of Asher Yatzar. And that was a tremendous power. There's all different things you could do. But here, directly, the bracha of Asher Yatzar, it's a focus on, it's midah k'neged midah, it's a focus on this idea of that Hashem is in charge of our health. And like we pointed out before, if you think about it, that and he quotes a case of someone who had needed some type of kidney transplant, and a doctor was willing to have to go fly to Turkey, and what's the expense of such a thing? He says over here it was $170,000 and all the other expenses that added up. But a person in that situation, they're ready to do it. Right? If a person needs a kidney transplant, they're going to somehow figure out and come up with all the money in the world to take care of it. So how thankful do we have to be that our kidneys, if things are working, when things are working, look, it's working, and what would I do? I would spend a few $100,000 if I had it to be able to do it. So what's the gratitude? The gratitude we have to have is at least a few $100,000 worth of gratitude to Hashem when things are working properly. He brings an amazing story. There was an older man. This is also somewhere in Eretz Yisrael. He was about 90 years old, and he got some blockage, some type of blockage, and he was tremendously ill. And they tried all the medical things that they could do. Nothing was working. And finally the doctors, they got to all the expert doctors in the country, and finally they threw up their hands. There's nothing else that they could do. And the head of the hospital, who was also a Shomer Torah Mitzvos, he was an observant Jew, he spoke to the family, he gathered them all together, and he told them this is the opinion, that the kidneys have stopped working, nothing's working, there's nothing more they could do. Conventional medicine, there's nothing's left to do. He says the only thing you could do now, the only thing that's left to do is to turn to Hashem. You have to get Hashem involved. Obviously they were before, but it's all going to be up to him. So he writes that this was one of the sons was involved in Kiruv. He was involved in the Jewish outreach with students. And the next day, it was a Friday afternoon, Friday morning, he took a whole group of students to the Kosel tunnels. They have the Kosel tunnel tours that run under the Kosel, and he took about 100 students to the Kosel tunnels. And after they came out of the tunnels, they gathered in front of the Kosel, and he started talking to the students. And he said that my father is lying in a hospital. He's very sick. His kidneys are shutting down. Nothing's working. The doctors have given up hope. And modern medicine, they said there's nothing that they could do. They all got very quiet, very serious. And he pleaded with them. These were, I assume these are not observant college students. And he said to them, he said, I'm going to teach you the bracha of Asher Yatzar. The bracha that we make, that our faculties work. The bracha that we make after we relieve ourselves. I'm going to teach you this bracha. And I want that everyone should learn this bracha, and we should say this bracha as a schus, as a merit for the refuah of my father. And he started teaching these kids. These kids didn't know about this bracha. They had no background. They're from a very secular background. And in front of the kosel, he started teaching them the bracha word for word. He took Sidurim, he taught them the bracha, and he asked them to accept upon themselves that they'll start to say this bracha. He said after they left, he got a phone call from the head of the Beis HaCholim, the head of the hospital, and or he called them maybe, and he told them the whole story about what he did. He said he got advice from one of the Gedolei Hadar that he should do something like this, the bracha of Asher Yatzar, the power that it could have. And he said, please go up and check on my father. And he says the head of the hospital, this doctor, he went up and he saw things started to change, and his father had a full recovery. That's the bracha, the power of the bracha of Asher Yatzar when we focus on what it's really all about. And like we said at the beginning, a doctor who sees this day in, day out, he brings over here, there was a doctor, a non-from doctor, he wasn't observant, and he was a doctor in Tel HaShomer Hospital, but every time, he didn't keep Shabbos, he didn't keep kosher probably, but he would say the bracha of Asher Yatzar when he came out of the bathroom. He wasn't wearing a yarmulke, a head covering. He said the bracha of Asher Yatzar every time he came out of the bathroom in the hospital. And someone who saw him kept doing it. He said it was very strange, what, So the doctor said to him, he said, I'm a chiloni, I'm a secular Jew, I'm not shomer Torah mitzvahs, I don't observe the Torah mitzvahs. But I'm a surgeon, and I see day in and day out the physical body and how wondrous and amazing it is and how it works properly. He says, how can I not at least make this bracha of Asher Yatzar? We'll end with two stories. This is an article from two stories. God Makes a House Call. This article I found on H.com by Ted Roberts. He's a Jewish writer. Also, I don't think he's observant. He has pieces that were in the Reader's Digest, other places. So he says, this is not my usual illuminating commentary on the deep mysteries of our faith. This is more of a medical Megillah. It's a true story, and I've got a note from my doctor to prove it. It's 2 a.m., and I've got, excuse my French, a urinary blockage. My wife, a Florence Nightingale, an experienced RN, understands immediately. We're off to the ER. Where's George Clooney? Everyone knows who that is? I don't know. So I assume some of you do. I mother in hysteria. I want George Clooney. Yeah. Wow, which ER was it?
His original.
Okay. Yeah. This episode began a week before with a series of procedures. Procedures, the mantra of the medical community, since it doesn't raise visions of blood, pain, and tears. Now, you call them procedures, it doesn't sound so bad. Procedure, sure, doc, let's do a procedure. You didn't say cutting, slicing, sewing, cauterizing, removing, did you? Procedure, that's such a nice, non-intrusive word. Do it. And we did, lots of them, for a week. Topped off by 2 days in that strange piece of real estate downtown that has 400 bedrooms, 400 baths, not one fireplace, and a large non-kosher cafeteria. And if you're lucky, the rent's covered by Medicare. So now I'm home after a week. You'd wish on the commander of Hezbollah, it's supposed to be all over. I'm supposed to be as free-flowing as the mountain brook, as it splashes playfully down Mount Hebron to the sea. But all of a sudden that problem. Now here I must digress to educate readers who are more into Seinfeld, Dershowitz, and Larry King than Maimonides or Rashi, the great Torah commentators. We Jews have an exalted view of He who created the cosmos, He who activates the pulse of the migrating monarch butterfly, the mother fox who knows to suckle her young, and an astronomer who peers into the Milky Way. C.S. Lewis, the great Christian philosopher, calls our bodies vast and perilous estates pulsating with the energy that made the world. We Jews share his awe of the human frame and understand that we only lease these earthly quarters. Laced with 1,000,000 possibilities for failure, the body only works because of some sleight of hand we don't understand. Its operation is a mathematical nightmare, a defiance of the laws of probability that would make an engineer wince. Thought, sensation, breathing, digestion, locomotion, elimination all depend on a synchronous performance by a set of perfectly functioning systems. A speck of dust in a pink passageway, and you're toast. To declare their admiration, awe, and thanks for these beneficent operations, observant Jews have a daily prayer, the Asher Yatzar. You create man with many openings and hollows, it says, and if one of them were to be ruptured or blocked, it would be impossible to survive. It goes on to say, blessed are you, Lord, who heals all flesh and acts wondrously. Now from the sublime back to my bedroom. Eerily illuminated by the night light, my hollows, one of them, as blocked up as Paro's heart. Back to the ER, unbearable. Then I saw it on the bedside table. My son, impelled by a faith far stronger than mine, had sent it. A large laminated poster, the prayer Asher Yatzar, in the middle, surrounded by cartoon-like illustrations. Primitive, almost laughable, especially to me, a tightly affiliated but imperfect Jew whose mitzvah batting average does not qualify me as a Hall of Famer. But there are no atheists in a foxhole or the ER, as any nurse will testify. And when you're drowning in a sea of suffering, if they throw you a noodle lifeline, you'll hang on. I read the prayer as I ate twice, in English and in Hebrew. The ardor, the passion of my Yom Kippur prayers was a whisper compared to this whirlwind. I said it twice, reading each word slowly and distinctly. I wanted no misunderstanding of my plight or my passion. The master healer must have a clear, comprehensive diagnosis. And then it happened. Relief. No ER, no intrusive techniques. Asher Yatzar, an internet engine of such power that it immediately reaches the sublime portal. Petitioners, penitents, praisers, pleaders worldwide, all simultaneously trying to connect. Human crevices and corridors stopped up all over this troubled world. Billions of prayers airborne, shading the earth itself, and mine, on the wings of Asher Yatzar, went through. It now stands on my bedroom wall. He says you could get a copy of your own by calling a 1-800 number. I admit that the ER number is also scribbled in pencil on a pad on my night table, but it's well below Asher Yatzar and rapidly fading in the sunlight streaming through my bedroom windows. Last story. A gift called Razy. This true story is written as heard from Tzipi, the woman involved. She agreed to tell over her personal story so that its profound message it could influence and encourage as many people as possible. Tzipi pointed to a framed picture on the sideboard in her dining room. I couldn't help but smile at the beautiful face of this handsome 2-year-old. His long brown curls covered the sides of his face and framed shining eyes in a winning smile. But Tzipi didn't return my smile. Instead, a veil of sorrow briefly swept over her caring eyes as she said, "That was Yehoshua, my third child, Olav Hashalom, may he rest in peace." That picture was taken just after we had discovered that he had a serious blockage in his intestines. We left the rest of the children in Eretz Yisrael, in Israel, and we flew off to America to operate, full of hope in God, although the doctors had given him only a 50% chance of being cured. The operation was not successful. The growth spread, the doctors advised another operation, and then yet another one. We gave our consent, increasing our tefillos and kabbalos, taking something upon yourself and the sick person's merit, reinforced by the prayers of our friends and relatives. But he didn't survive. He passed away shortly afterward. Tzipi's eyes were moist with tears. The pain remained deep in our heart. We had no choice but to accept it as a heavenly decree and get back into our daily routines. We began a crib gemach, a lending society in his memory, lending out portable cribs for newborn babies. After Yeshua passed away, we had more healthy children, Baruch Hashem. Things ran smoothly again, until Razy was born. She also began to have digestive problems, slightly different than what Yeshua had suffered, but the prognosis was just as serious as Yeshua's had been. This time I took it very badly. It was like a terrifying dream, a nightmare that I was reliving. All the trying times and vivid mental images of Yeshua's suffering came back to me and gave me no rest. I felt like I did not have the strength, both physically and emotionally, to go through it all again. The doctors again advised difficult and complicated surgery, which they cannot guarantee would succeed. Preparations were made to fly to the same hospital in the United States where Yeshua, may he rest in peace, had been treated unsuccessfully. The required sum of money was collected. When my older children heard the news, they were also very worried. They too recalled the difficult times we had been through. What can I do? I thought in desperation. Then my husband came up with the most appropriate idea. We would begin to say Asher Yatzar, the prayer of thanksgiving on the proper functioning of the body, with a little more concentration, reading the words from inside a siddur, a prayer book. Weren't those the very words that I needed to say? Didn't I, of all mothers, need to turn to He who formed man with wisdom and created numerous openings and passages within him? Wasn't it I who needed to acknowledge that it is revealed and known before the throne of your glory that should any of them burst open, or should any one of them become obstructed, it will be impossible for man to survive and stand before you? My child now had an obstruction. Would she merit to grow up and survive and stand before God as a healthy child and an adult, as a wife, a mother, a grandmother? Could any human being heal my child without the guidance of the Supreme Healer? The Rofei Chol Basar Mafil Asos, the healer who cures all flesh and acts wondrously? Creator of the world, I prayed, you can heal Raisi so easily. This time, please let her have a complete recovery and live. My older children noticed how I had begun to recite Asher Yatzar, and they followed suit. I went out to buy an attractive poster of the bracha with an explanation of the words in Hebrew. The younger children watched as I hung it up over the sink outside the bathroom. They were also eager to join in our efforts for Raisi's sake. My 10-year-old even enlisted the help of his friends. This Asher Yatzar was in addition to the many chapters of Psalms that we were already saying for Raisi's merit and the specific hours of practicing Shmiras Halashon, guarding our speech, consciously monitoring our speech and what we listen to. Meanwhile, Raisi lost more and more weight. We were in and out of the hospital with her until a date for her surgery in the U.S. was finally set. I knew that my neighbors, family, and friends who had shared my pain and come to comfort me when Yehoshua had passed away were also devastated. I decided to accept their offers for help. On Erev Shabbos, before our departure for America, I invited a few neighbors to come over for a visit after candlelighting. I'll always remember the way they walked in. Silently, their faces drawn in a worry and dread. Their discomfort was clearly visible as they settled onto the couch. What could you say to a mother who is facing a life and death crisis for the second time? But I didn't mince words. I would like you to do something for me, I began. Tzipi, of course, we are prepared to help, Goldie interjected. We've already designed a meal preparation plan for when you're gone. We'll be taking runs sending over meals for the children. Tell us what else you need. We all want to help. I smiled. Thank you, that's very kind of you. But actually, I want to ask you for something quite different. I would like to ask all of you to take upon yourselves to say the blessing of Asher Yatzar with extra concentration, preferably from a written text, as a special merit for Raisi. They all heaved a sigh of relief. They seemed to think I was asking a simple favor. I explained to my friends that my request was not as easy as it sounded, and told them that our family had already begun this project. I told them what it involved, standing still for a few moments and concentrating on the words of the bracha without drying one's hands or doing anything else even mechanically at the time. Each woman gave her full consent, and I handed out translated copies of the bracha. After Shabbos, I called a few relatives and friends and made the same request. Then the day of our flight arrived. We took our sick daughter, our hopes, our prayers, and left for the United States. A few days later, we were back in that terrifying hospital, the scene of Yeshua's suffering, of our agony, of our bereavement. So many black memories came back to me. The only positive moments I experienced were when I received word from Israel, as my friends and family updated me on the success of the Asher Yatzar campaign. The day and the hour of Raisi's operation arrived. The doctors were trying to cure our daughter, but they couldn't promise anything. As I handed her over to the anesthesiologist who accompanied her into the operating room, the only thought from which I drew strength was the knowledge that she was accompanied by wonderful, perfect angels created by the perfect brachos, the blessings and amens uttered specifically to help her in her time of need. 36 hours after the surgery, Professor Gerald Simpson, a world-famous specialist in the field, shook my husband's hand warmly and told him, "You couldn't have hoped for better results." We knew that he would not speak so hastily unless he was confident the operation had been a complete success. A week later, we were informed that Raisi's condition was excellent. The surgery had been so successful that she wouldn't even need a second operation, as was usually the case. One of the doctors classified it as a medical miracle. Another few days passed, we were dismissed from the hospital. A short while later, we were allowed to fly back to Eretz Yisrael. We arrived home bearing a gift in our hands, a gift called Raisi. As soon as Raisi learned to speak, we taught her to say Asher Yatzar. Tears would stream from my eyes each time I listened to her. She could recite the entire bracha by heart, even before she knew how to read. To this day, our family is careful to recite the bracha the way we took upon ourselves over 20 years ago. We know that it is in the merit of this bracha that we have our Raisi and her wonderful children. Our heartfelt brachos are an expression of our boundless thanks to the Rofei Chol Basar, who heals the sick and constantly maintains the wondrous functioning of our bodies. Pretty powerful. Hopefully this will be a little bit of an inspiration to understand the bracha of Asher Yatzar, to understand that it's all in the hands of God. We should strive to use this bracha to get closer to Hashem, to spend a little bit more time on saying this bracha, and realize the power that it has, that Hashem should continue to protect us. We shouldn't see illness, and all those that need a full shalom should have a complete recovery. Amen.